In this video, we're going to walk through Vigeo Eiris' ESG assessment methodology. Now, our methodology for rating companies begins from the guidance of international texts and reference standards, such as those from the United Nations, the International Labour Organization, or the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. These reference standards outline what the expectations are in terms of corporate social responsibilities, and they provide the ESG criteria on which we expect companies to provide ESG disclosures. Now, within our assessment framework, there are 38 ESG criteria that we look at, and they are housed within 40 sector frameworks, and these will be shown later on to you in this presentation. The output of our ESG assessment is effectively the overall ESG score for a company, the E, S, and G scores individually, the criterion scores as well that we will show later on, and then integrated within our research is also a review of any ESG controversies that a company might be facing. So here on this next slide, I've got a map of the ESG criteria that I was talking about. And so you could see that within this concept of an environmental domain, there are a number of different ESG criteria we could look at for a company: water, energy, biodiversity, transportation. They'll be assessed depending on their materiality to a given sector. Within business behavior, you find issues related to consumer safety, you find issues related to supply chain management, as well as traditional business ethics issues like corruption, lobbying, and anti-competition. We look at criteria related to human resources, related to human rights, corporate governance, and then community involvement as well. For any one of those given criteria, we follow the same approach when we are developing our scores. What we undertake is effectively a managerial assessment related to that ESG criterion. And so we look systematically at three pillars of questioning. There are questions related to leadership. How committed is the company to addressing this issue? There are questions related to implementation. What measure has the company put in place in order to support actions around those commitments? And finally, we look at results. What is the impact of their sustainability efforts? And within those three pillars, there are a number of specific questions that we look at. So within leadership, for example, we're looking to see how visible the policy is, how detailed the policy is, and which structures within the organization take ownership over it. Within implementation, we're more interested in understanding what trainings or risk assessments or activities are going on around the issues of water, energy, or corruption, for example. And within results, we systematically look for disclosed ESG KPIs, as well as any ESG controversies that may be impacting the company. By going through and answering these questions and examining the public ESG disclosures of companies, we build scores from 0 to 100, and we have a 4-point scale that we use. So scores between 0 to 29 are what we consider as weak, scores between 30 to 49 are what we consider to be limited, scores between 50 to 59 are what we consider to be robust scores, and companies attaining scores of 60 plus are those that we consider to be advanced. I mentioned earlier this concept of sector materiality, and obviously these ESG criteria won't be assessed for every single company. It wouldn't make sense. And so in determining whether or not a criterion is material, we look at two factors. And we look at the materiality to the company. What are the risks that it might face if it fails to manage this issue? So here we're looking at potential impacts to human capital, to operational efficiency, to reputation or legal security. But then we also look at potential risks to stakeholders as well. So what's their level of vulnerability to the company's management of this issue? And what's the materiality for them? For every single one of those 38 criteria, we build weighting scores from 0, meaning this is immaterial for this sector, to 3, meaning that this is highly material. On this slide, you're able to see the 40 sector frameworks that we use for assessing companies. And so any given company will be housed within these. And at Vigeo Eiris, we have dedicated research teams that are specialized in understanding the sector issues at this level. Finally, when it comes to calculating and putting together a score, effectively we can look back at the steps that I showed so far in this presentation and walk through them. We take a criterion like water. We assess the company's leadership, its implementation and its results on that issue, and that provides us with a criterion score, and we have alongside that a criterion weight depending on its materiality to companies and to stakeholders. The weighted average of all the criteria that are assessed within a given company, that's what provides us with the overall score for a company. Now that can be impacted using our alert service. So if there is a major controversy that fundamentally reshapes our opinion on an issuer, we are able to issue at short notice an alert, downgrading companies or putting them on some form of watch list. The output are then the ESG assessments that we provide to hundreds of investors worldwide today. The scores that we provide measure the capacity of an issuer to manage what we consider to be material ESG risks, and the scores we express on a 0 to 100 scale. The use case for investors varies. Some use it for ESG integration to manage risks, some use it for more reputational risk purposes, some use it for a compliance perspective, some use it to adhere to investment mandates. They can be used for ethical screening, and they can certainly be used for portfolio analysis. In terms of deliverables, we provide comprehensive and insightful reports containing a mix of quantitative and qualitative data. And obviously for more quantitatively focused investors, we provide Excel data sets with access to all of the metrics and underlying information as well.